A millionaire misses his flight in a crowded airport and comes across a crying girl alone, clinging to a destroyed suitcase. Driven by an impulse, he decides to approach her, but what the girl reveals leaves him completely shaken. Before listening to this incredible story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more exciting tales. The frenetic movement of the capital's airport resembled a whirlwind of voices and hurried footsteps. Victor Alliance adjusted his tie knot as he watched the flight information board, awaiting boarding for his business meeting in the neighboring city. At 52, he had achieved everything he had ever dreamed of in the business world, building an empire that stretched across several states. But he carried a pain in his heart that not even all his success could heal. 3 years had passed since Olivia left. His only daughter at 16 had been the victim of a car accident that completely changed the course of his life. The drunk driver who caused the collision had transformed Victor from a proud and happy father into an emotionally devastated man. Since then, he had thrown himself into work as a form of escape, building a business empire that was now respected throughout the country. His financial consulting firms were sought after by the largest national conglomerates, and his reputation for integrity and competence had made him a benchmark in the sector. But inside he felt empty, as if an essential part of himself had disappeared forever. His colleagues respected him, his employees admired him, and his clients implicitly trusted his decisions. But Victor knew he was operating on autopilot, fulfilling professional obligations without feeling the passion that once motivated him. Every morning he woke up in his quiet mansion, drank coffee alone, gazing at the garden Olivia adored, and went to his office, where he spent long hours trying not to think about the emptiness he felt inside. It was then that his eyes caught an image that made him stop. Sitting on the cold airport floor, leaning against a marble column, was a girl who appeared to be about 8 years old. Her clothes were wrinkled and a little too big for her frail body. In her thin arms she held a worn leather briefcase, as if it were her most precious possession. What struck Victor most was the child's expression. Her large, dark eyes seemed lost, yet also alert, as if she were waiting for someone who might not return. There was something in that gaze that directly reminded him of his own daughter, a resemblance not in physical features, but in the vulnerability the child tried to hide behind a courageous posture. Victor tried to look away, to concentrate on the documents he carried in his briefcase, but his eyes always returned to the girl. She wasn't crying, screaming, asking for help, or trying to get attention. She simply remained there, motionless, like a small porcelain statue lost amidst the urban chaos. There was a silent dignity in her posture that contrasted dramatically with her apparent state of abandonment. Victor discreetly observed for more than 20 minutes, trying to identify any adult who might be responsible for the child. Several people passed by the girl without paying attention, hurried executives with phones glued to their ears, families carrying luggage to their holidays, elderly people slowly making their way to the boarding gates. Airport security guards regularly patrolled the area, but none seemed to have noticed her presence, or, if they had, they assumed she was accompanied. The girl, for her part, did nothing to draw attention to her situation. She didn't get up to approach employees, she didn't cry aloud, she didn't show any visible signs of despair. It was as if she had learned to be invisible, a disturbing skill for someone so young. After observing discreetly for a few minutes, Victor noticed that several people passed by the child without paying attention. Airport security guards were moving through the area, but none seemed to have noticed her presence. The girl, for her part, didn't ask for help or try to get attention. She simply existed in that space, as if she were part of the furniture. Victor's conscience began to trouble him intensely. As a successful businessman, he was used to making quick decisions and solving problems, but the girl's situation left him in a moral dilemma. On the one hand, he knew that interfering in the situation of an unknown child could lead to legal complications. On the other hand, his paternal conscience wouldn't allow him to ignore a child who was clearly in a vulnerable situation. She remembered how Olivia used to get lost in thought when she was little, sitting in the garden of her house with her drawings scattered around, creating imaginary worlds with colored pencils. The resemblance was unsettling and comforting at the same time, as if fate had placed that child in her path, for some specific reason she couldn't yet understand. Victor carefully placed the documents in his Italian leather briefcase and observed the girl's behavior more closely. She occasionally looked around, clearly searching for someone, but her movements were controlled and discreet. There was no visible desperation, only a patient waiting that revealed a worrying maturity for her apparent age. The briefcase she was holding drew particular attention. It was made of aged brown leather, with gold rivets that had lost their luster. It appeared to be an antique object, possibly an heirloom or an important family memento. The way the child held it against her body suggested that it contained something of great sentimental value to her. Finally, Victor made his decision. He rose from his chair in the airport cafe, straightened the jacket of his impeccable suit, and walked toward the girl with deliberate but cautious steps. His Italian leather shoes made a distinct sound against the polished floor, but she didn't look up as he approached. She only clutched her briefcase tighter to her chest, as if protecting herself from some unseen threat. Victor stopped a few meters away, observing the child's defensive posture. It was evident that she had developed protective mechanisms that were not typical of a child her age. This made him suspect that her situation was more complex than a simple case of accidental separation at the airport. "Hi," Victor finally said, crouching down to the child's eye level, a technique he had learned years ago to communicate less intimidatingly with Olivia when she was little. "Are you okay? Are you expecting someone?" The girl studied him for several seconds before answering, as if assessing whether he posed any kind of threat. Her large, dark eyes seemed to hold a wisdom and caution that didn't match her apparent age. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, but there was a strange maturity to it, as if she had been forced to grow up too quickly. "My stepmother Rose told me to wait here," she replied, without taking her eyes off Victor's face, studying his expressions as if trying to decipher his true intentions. "She went to get the tickets and said she'd be right back, but it's been a long time." Victor noticed that the girl didn't say mother, but rather stepmother, which immediately raised questions about her family situation. He also noticed the controlled way she expressed herself, choosing her words carefully and keeping important information vague. Victor looked around, searching for any woman who might be returning to pick up the child. The airport remained bustling with activity, but no female figure seemed to be looking for a lost girl. "How long have you been here?" Victor asked, feeling a growing tightness in his chest. "I'm not sure," she replied, shrugging. "Since the sun was up there," she said, pointing to a skylight in the ceiling. "Now I can't see it anymore." Victor glanced at the watch on his wrist. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. If the girl had been there since noon, as her words suggested, 5 hours had already passed without any sign of her stepmother. "What's your name?" Victor asked, trying to keep his tone calm so as not to frighten the child. "Helena," she replied, and for the first time offered what could be considered a shy smile. "And you?" "Victor. Nice to meet you, Helena." He extended his hand, and she shook it gently, as if she had learned good manners somewhere far away. "Is this your briefcase?" Helena nodded, hugging the object even tighter. "My dad gave it to me. He said it was for keeping important things in." The mention of his father made Victor frown. "And where is your father now?" Helena's face tightened slightly, and she looked away. "He went to heaven a while ago. That's why I live with Rose now." Victor felt his heart race. The child was an orphan, having lost his father, and had apparently been abandoned by his stepmother at a busy airport. The situation was more serious than he had initially imagined. "Helena, are you hungry?" Victor asked, noticing that the child looked thinner than she should. "I can buy you something to eat while we wait for Rose to return." Helena's eyes lit up for the first time since Victor had approached. "I'd love to. Rose said she was going to bring a snack, but she still hasn't returned," Victor finished, feeling a growing indignation against this Rose, whoever she was. "Come on, let's go to the food court. You can bring your briefcase." Helena stood up carefully, clutching the suitcase with both hands. It was even smaller than Victor had initially realized, and her clothes really did seem to have been chosen for an older child. Something was wrong with the situation. something that triggered her protective instincts on high alert. As they walked through the expansive airport area, Victor observed how Helena moved carefully, always looking around as if she expected to see Rose appear at any moment. But he also noticed how relieved she seemed to have company, as if she carried an invisible weight on her small shoulders. In the food court, Victor bought a sandwich, orange juice, and some fruit for Helena. He watched as she ate with a hunger that seemed to have accumulated, but always delicately, as if she had been taught never to show need. "Helena," Victor said carefully, "do you remember which flight Rose said you were going to take?" The girl stopped eating and thought for a moment. "She didn't say anything. She only said we were going to travel to a beautiful place where I could play. But then she changed her mind and said I should wait here because she had forgotten something important." The pieces were beginning to fall into place in Victor's mind, forming a picture that left him increasingly worried. Rose had brought Helena to the airport under the pretense of a trip, but had later changed her story. The child had been there for hours, inappropriately dressed, with only an old suitcase for company. "May I see what's in your briefcase?" Victor asked gently. "Perhaps we'll find a contact number or something that will help us find Rose." Helena hesitated for a moment, then carefully opened the worn clasp of the suitcase. Inside, Victor saw some small clothes, a sketchbook with yellowed pages, and a teddy bear that had seen better days. There were no documents, phone numbers, or anything that could help locate the child's guardian. "This is Theo," said Helena, picking up the teddy bear affectionately. "Daddy gave him to me when I was very little. Rose said I should leave him at home, but I brought him secretly." Victor felt something break inside his chest. The image of an orphaned child, abandoned at an airport with only the clothes on her back and a few belongings, was devastating. He remembered how he protected Olivia, how he made sure she never experienced fear or insecurity. "Helena, listen," said Victor, choosing his words carefully. "I think Rose might be lost, or perhaps she's had some trouble. I'll speak to airport security so they can help find her. Would you stay with me in the meantime?" Helena nodded, but her eyes revealed a knowledge beyond her years. It was as if she knew on some level that Rose wouldn't return, but still clung to a stubborn hope that she was wrong. Victor went to the information desk, leading Helena by the hand. The child's skin was cold, despite the airport's warm environment. He explained the situation to the employee on duty, who immediately alerted security and began procedures to locate this Rose. While they waited, Victor couldn't stop watching Helena. There was something about the girl's posture, the way she held the teddy bear, the way her big eyes seemed to hold secrets, that deeply affected him. It was impossible not to think of Olivia, but it was also impossible to ignore that Helena needed immediate help. Hours passed, and there was no sign of Rose. Security cameras showed a dark-haired woman leaving the child by the column and leaving the airport alone, without looking back even once. The image made Victor's blood boil with indignation. When the social workers arrived at the airport, Victor had already made a decision that would change his life forever. He wouldn't allow Helena to go to a temporary shelter, not that night. He offered to be her temporary guardian while the authorities investigated the case and tried to locate Rose or other relatives of the child. Helena, who had remained quiet throughout the bureaucratic process, finally spoke as they were leaving the airport towards Victor's car. "Are you sure you want to take me with you?" she asked, looking up with her large, serious eyes. "Rose always said I was a lot of trouble." Victor stopped walking and crouched down again in front of the girl. For a moment he saw Olivia in those eyes, but he also saw Helena, a unique, brave and special child who deserved to be protected and loved. "Helena, you're no trouble at all," he said firmly. "And yes, I'm absolutely sure. Let's go home." Victor Allianz's mansion was located in a gated community on the outskirts of the capital, a place where the silence was broken only by birdsong and the distant sound of traffic. Helena remained quiet throughout the journey, watching through the car window as the city lights gradually came on with nightfall. When they arrived at the entrance to the building, Helena frowned as she saw the doorman greet Victor by name. It was obvious she wasn't used to that kind of respectful treatment. At Rose's house, things were very different. "This is Helena," Victor introduced the girl to the doorman, Marco. "She'll be staying with me for a while." Marco smiled gently at the child. "Welcome, Helena. If you need anything, you can call me." Helena simply nodded shyly, clutching her teddy bear Theo to her chest. She still couldn't believe that someone was being kind to her without wanting anything in return. Victor's house was immaculate, with dark wood furniture and a sober yet elegant decor. Helena looked around with wide eyes, as if she were entering a museum. Everything was very different from the old mansion where she lived with Rose, which always seemed cold and neglected. "You must be tired," said Victor, noticing how Helena walked slowly, still clutching her worn suitcase. "How about I show you where you can rest?" Victor led her to a guest room on the second floor. It was a spacious room with a double bed, a desk near the window, and a large wardrobe. Helena entered the room as if treading on eggshells, afraid of breaking something. "This room is very pretty," she murmured, carefully placing the suitcase on the bed. "Are you sure I can sleep here?" The question broke Victor's heart. "Of course, Helena. As long as you're here, this is your home too." Helena opened the suitcase and began to take out a few clothes with precise movements, as if each piece were extremely valuable. Victor noticed that her clothes were of good quality, but were worn from use, and some were too big for her. "Helena," Victor said gently, sitting on the edge of the bed, "would you like to tell me a little about your life with Rose? Perhaps that would help me understand the situation better." Helena hesitated, clutching a small blouse in her hands. "Rose always said I shouldn't talk about our house to strangers, that it was better to keep secrets." "I understand. But you know I'm not a stranger now, right? And there's nothing wrong with telling the truth about how you lived." The girl sat on the bed, still clutching her shirt. "Rose didn't like me very much. She always said I cost too much money and was too much trouble. The house I lived in was very big, but I could only stay in my room most of the time." Victor felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "And why did you just stay in your room?" "Rose said it was better this way, that I made too much noise and got in the way of the important things she needed to do. Sometimes when she went out, I could draw in the living room, but I always had to put everything away before she came back." "And did you go to school?" Helena shook her head negatively. "Rose said I wasn't ready for school yet, that first I needed to learn to be a well-behaved girl. But I knew how to read a little because my daddy taught me before he left." Victor realized that Helena avoided talking directly about her father's departure, creating euphemisms to cope with the pain. She was a child who had learned very early on to protect her feelings. "Do you miss your dad?" Helena's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. "I draw him in my notebook so I don't forget what he looked like. Rose said it was silly to keep remembering, but I don't want to forget." "Can I see your drawings?" Helena hesitated for a moment, then took the yellowed notebook from her briefcase. The pages were filled with drawings made with worn-out colored pencils. Most depicted a smiling man with glasses, always next to a little girl. There were also drawings of the house where she lived, always with closed windows and a gloomy atmosphere. "Your dad seemed like a very loving person," Victor commented, carefully flipping through the pages. "He always said I was his little princess," Helena sighed. "But when he left, Rose said that now I was her responsibility and that things were going to be different." "Different how?" "Rose never played with me like Dad did. She was always busy with papers and phones, and sometimes people would come to the house, men in suits who would speak quietly to her. When they came, I had to stay locked in my room." Victor frowned. There was something very strange about this story. Why would a stepmother keep a child practically in captivity? And who were these men visiting the house? "Helena, do you remember Rose's full name, or any of those men who came to visit her?" "Rose never told me her last name, and the men, I only ever heard them talking about numbers and paperwork. Once I heard one of them call Rose Mrs. Sallon, but I don't know if that was her real name." Sallon. The name echoed in Victor's mind like an alarm. He recognized that surname from somewhere, but he couldn't quite remember where. "Are you hungry, Helena? I can prepare something for you to eat." Helena nodded shyly. "Can I help? I know how to cook a few things. Rose used to teach me when she was in a good mood." In the kitchen, Victor watched Helena move with surprising efficiency for an 8-year-old. She washed her hands carefully, helped prepare a simple sandwich and set the table without needing instructions. It was evident that she had been forced to become independent very early. "Helena, can I ask you an important question?" Victor sat down at the table, watching the girl eat slowly, savoring each bite. "Are you sure Rose said she would come back to pick you up at the airport?" Helena stopped chewing and looked at Victor with her big eyes. She said that, but she hesitated, as if deciding whether she should continue. "But what?" "But yesterday morning, before we left, I overheard Rose talking on the phone. She told someone that the problem would be solved today, and that after that she could move on with the plans. I didn't quite understand, but she seemed too happy." Victor felt a chill down his spine. Each detail Helena revealed painted a clearer and more disturbing picture. Rose had abandoned the girl on purpose, and it was all part of some larger plan. "You mentioned that your dad left you some things. Besides the teddy bear and the suitcase, was there anything else?" Helena thought for a moment, then nodded. "Dad gave me a tiny key before he left. He said it was to open something important when I grew up, but Rose never knew about that key. Where is that key now?" Helena looked around, making sure they were alone, then carefully opened a small hole in the seam of Theo the teddy bear. From inside the hole she took out a small golden key, as small as a padlock key. "Dad taught me to hide it here. He said Rose should never know about this key." Victor held the small key in the palm of his hand, feeling its minimal weight. It was delicate and had engravings that he couldn't decipher in the kitchen light. Whatever this key opened, Helena's father had considered it important enough to keep it a secret. "Helena, did your dad say what this key opens?" "He said he was opening the place where he kept important stories, but I never really understood what that meant." Important stories. Victor supposed it could be a safe, a drawer, or perhaps a cabinet where Helena's father kept valuable documents. If Rose was desperate to get rid of the girl, perhaps it was because Helena represented some kind of threat to her plans for the inheritance. Victor's phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Agnes, the social worker, who had taken on Helena's case at the airport. "Mr. Allianz, we have obtained some preliminary information regarding Helena's situation. The woman who abandoned her at the airport is indeed named Rose Salin. She was married to Helena's father, Pietro Ollins, who passed away 2 years ago." Pietro Ollins. Victor mentally noted the name, which also sounded familiar to him for some reason. "And what about Helena's family? Does she have other relatives?" "We are investigating, but apparently Pietro had no close family, and Rose became the girl's legal guardian after his death. The strange thing is that we haven't found any record of Helena in schools or hospitals in the last 2 years. It's as if she disappeared from the official systems." Victor looked at Helena, who was quietly playing with her teddy bear Theo, seemingly oblivious to the phone conversation that would determine her future. "Agnes, I need to ask you an important question. How long have you been working with guardianship cases?" 15 years, Mr. Allianz. Why do you ask?" "Have you ever seen a case where a child was intentionally kept isolated so that no one would know of their existence?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mr. Allianz, that would be a very serious situation. Are you suggesting that Helena was held captive?" "I'm suggesting that Rose Salin may have had very specific reasons for keeping Helena away from the public eye, and that the abandonment at the airport was just the final step in a larger plan. We will investigate all of these possibilities. In the meantime, Helena can remain in your temporary custody, but I recommend that you be alert to any attempt at contact from Rose or people connected to her." After ending the call, Victor turned his attention to Helena, who had finished eating and was now watching the city lights through the kitchen window. "Helena, can I ask you one more question?" She nodded, always willing to talk, as if she were thirsty for human attention. "Do you remember if Rose received many visits from lawyers or people who talked about money?" Helena thought carefully before answering. "Yes, almost every week a gentleman with glasses would come and talk about documents and signatures. Rose always got nervous when he came, but she was also happy after he left. I once heard her say that soon everything would be resolved, and she could live as she deserved." The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place in Victor's mind. Rose had kept Helena isolated, probably to manipulate her legal guardianship without outside interference. Abandoning her at the airport would be the final step to get rid of the girl and gain complete control over any inheritance Pietro Ollins had left her. "Helena, would you like to watch a movie before bed? I have a few films that I think you would enjoy." Helena's eyes lit up. "Rose never let me watch movies. She said they were too noisy." "Well, here you can watch as many movies as you want." As Helena settled on the living room sofa, hugging her teddy bear Theo, Victor couldn't stop thinking about the details she had revealed. Pietro Ollins, Rose Sallin, the mysterious key, the forced isolation, it all formed a pattern that left him increasingly worried. But above all, watching Helena laugh at a cartoon she had chosen, Victor felt a growing determination. That child had been through enough trauma. She deserved safety, affection, and the chance to just be a normal child. And he would do everything in his power to make sure that happened, regardless of the secrets Helena's past might reveal. The next morning, Victor woke to the sound of careful movements coming from the kitchen. He went downstairs and found Helena trying to reach a glass in the high cupboard, stretching on tiptoe with silent determination. "Good morning, Helena," said Victor, taking the glass to her. "Did you sleep well?" Helena nodded, but Victor noticed dark circles under her eyes. "I had a dream about Dad. He was showing me a big house with many open windows and light coming in from all sides. It seems like a beautiful dream." "It was," Helena smiled shyly. "Very different from the house where I lived with Rose. There, the curtains were always closed, even during the day." Victor prepared breakfast while Helena sat at the table, carefully arranging the utensils as if it were an important ritual. It was impressive how she had developed small habits of precision, probably as a way to avoid problems with Rose. "Helena, yesterday you mentioned hearing Rose talking about numbers and roles with those men. Do you remember anything else about those conversations?" Helena bit her lower lip, concentrating. "They were talking about transfers and pending signatures. I once heard Rose say that the girl was delaying the process and that she needed to find a definitive solution." Victor stopped stirring the eggs in the pan. "Are you sure they were talking about you?" "I think so. Rose always called me the girl when she talked to other people, as if I didn't have a name." Rose's coldness was even more disturbing than Victor had imagined, treating an orphaned child like an object, an obstacle to be removed. This revealed a level of cruelty that nauseated him. After breakfast, Victor took Helena to see his home office, a space she observed with curiosity. The bookshelves full of books, the diplomas on the wall, the organized desk. Everything was very different from what she knew. "Do you work with numbers too?" Helena asked, pointing to the spreadsheets open on the computer. "Yes, but different numbers than the ones Rose was discussing. I manage companies. I help them grow and succeed." Helena approached the table and saw a photo of Olivia in an elegant frame. The girl in the photo was smiling happily, wearing a blue dress and holding a bouquet of flowers. "She's very pretty," Helena commented softly. "Is she your daughter?" Victor felt the familiar tightness in his chest. It was. Olivia left a few years ago. "Where did she go?" "To a place where I no longer feel your presence," Victor replied honestly, without using euphemisms. Helena seemed to understand these subjective languages better than children her age. Helena gently touched the photo frame. "Do you miss her every day?" "Every day. I miss my dad every day too. That's why I draw him, so he can stay close to me." Helena's simplicity and wisdom deeply touched Victor. This child had found his own ways of coping with loss, even while living in a hostile environment. The office phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was a lawyer named Aaron Carmin, who introduced himself as a former colleague of Pietro Ollins. "Mr. Alliance, I learned from social worker Agnes that you are temporarily caring for Pietro's daughter. I need to speak with you about a very important matter concerning her inheritance." Victor asked Helena to play in the living room and answered the call privately. "Mr. Carmin, could you explain the situation to me in more detail?" "Pietro Ollins was my client for many years. When he passed away, he left a considerable inheritance to his daughter, including properties and investments. Rose Salin assumed guardianship, but in recent months I have had difficulty contacting her about important matters related to the girl's assets. What kind of difficulties? She has been avoiding meetings, not answering calls, and when we manage to talk to her, she always makes excuses to postpone signing essential documents. The strangest thing is that she has been pushing to expedite certain transfers that would only benefit her. Victor felt his suspicions confirmed. Mr. Carmin, are you aware that Rose abandoned Helena at an airport yesterday? There was silence on the other end of the line. What do you mean you quit? Victor explained the events of the previous day and could hear the growing indignation in the lawyer's voice. This is extremely serious, Mr. Allianz. If Rose intentionally abandoned her guardianship of Helena, this could invalidate all the documents she recently signed. I need to immediately verify if there have been any irregular transactions involving the girl's assets. How long ago did Pietro Ollins pass away? 2 years and 3 months. And I have some information that might interest you. Pietro worked at a financial consulting firm that had as one of its main partners a man named Luca Muller. They had a business partnership that ended in a turbulent manner a few years before Pietro's death. The name Luca Muller struck Victor like a thunderbolt. Luca had been his partner in an investment firm about 10 years ago. The partnership had ended traumatically, with mutual accusations of financial irregularities and a legal battle that lasted for years. Victor had managed to prove his innocence, but the experience had left deep scars on his reputation and confidence. Mr. Carmin, did you say Luca Muller? Yes, do you know him? Unfortunately, I know him. He was my former business partner a few years ago. The separation wasn't amicable. This explains many things. I have documents here, showing that Luca Muller had meetings with Rose Salin in recent weeks. If there is a connection between them and Helena's abandonment, we may be facing a conspiracy to appropriate the girl's assets. Victor felt his blood run cold. Luca Muller had always been vengeful and calculating. If he was involved in Helena's situation, it meant that abandoning the girl at the airport hadn't been a coincidence. It was a move aimed at Victor personally. Mr. Carmin, I need to schedule an urgent meeting with you, and I suggest you contact the authorities regarding possible irregularities in the management of Helena's assets. After ending the call, Victor remained seated in his office for a few minutes, processing the information. Luca Muller was back in his life, this time using an orphaned child as a pawn in a personal revenge game. It was repugnant, but unfortunately typical of his former partner's character. Victor went downstairs to the living room and found Helena sketching in her notebook, sitting on the floor near the fireplace. She had drawn the house where she was now, but this time with open windows and flowers in the garden. What a beautiful drawing, Helena. It's your house, but how I wish it were mine too, she said without lifting her eyes from the paper. Can I stay here a little longer? Victor's heart tightened. Helena, I would very much like you to stay here as long as you want, but I need to settle some legal matters first. Helena stopped drawing and looked at him with her large, intelligent eyes. Does it have to do with Rose and those men who used to come to our house? Maybe. Helena, do you remember if any of those men were named Luca? Helena frowned, concentrating. I don't know their names, but I remember that one of them was taller than the others, with grey hair and a very deep voice. Rose always got more nervous when he came, and after he left, she always locked me in the room for longer. Do you remember anything else about this man? He had a very shiny gold ring and always wore a red tie, and once I heard him tell Rose that Victor Allianz would pay dearly for everything he did. I didn't understand at the time, but now that I know his name... Victor felt a chill run down his spine. Luca wasn't just involved in the scheme against Helena. He had specifically planned for Victor to get involved. The girl's abandonment at the airport, where Victor frequently traveled on business, hadn't been a coincidence. Helena, has this man you described been to Rose's house before? Several times. Every time he left, Rose would be happy afterward, as if she'd received good news, and she would always say things like, soon everything will change, and finally, I'll get what I deserve. Victor realized that Luca had manipulated Rose, likely offering her a share of Helena's assets in exchange for her cooperation. In the revenge scheme. It was an elaborate and cruel plan, using an orphaned child as an instrument for settling a personal score. Helena, I have to make some important calls now. Can you continue drawing here in the room? Can I draw you too? To put in my notebook along with Dad's. Helena's simple question was like an emotional punch to Victor. She was beginning to trust him, to see him as a father figure. This made his determination to protect her even stronger. Of course, Helena, I would be honored to be in your notebook. Victor returned to the office and immediately called his personal lawyer, Felipe Lehman, a competent man who had helped him during the litigation with Luca years ago. Felipe, I need your help urgently. Luca Muller is back, and this time he's using an orphan child to try and harm me. Victor explained the whole situation, from the encounter with Helena to the revelations about the connection between Rose, Luca, and Pietro Olins. Felipe listened attentively, asking pertinent questions and taking notes. Victor, this is more serious than simple revenge. If Luca manipulated Helena's guardianship to appropriate assets that don't belong to him, we're talking about large-scale fraud. And the fact that they used you as a central piece of the plan shows how elaborate this conspiracy is. What can we legally do? First, I will file a petition for you to become Helena's official temporary guardian based on abandonment and evidence of neglect. Second, I will request a full investigation into the financial transactions related to the girl's inheritance. Third, we will expose the entire network of manipulation that Luca built. And Helena, how do I protect her during this process? Keep her close to you. Document everything she says about the past and prepare for an intense legal battle. Luca won't give up easily. After ending the call, Victor returned to the room and found Helena finishing a drawing of him sitting at his desk, with Olivia beside him and herself on the other side. It was a family image that Helena had created in her imagination, a home where all the people who had lost something could find wholeness. I really like the drawing, Helena. It's how I imagine it would be if we were a real family, she said shyly. You, me, and Olivia watching over us from heaven. Victor sat on the floor next to Helena and hugged her gently. Helena, I want you to know something important. Regardless of what happens in the next few days, I will do everything I can to keep you safe and happy. Helena snuggled into Victor's embrace, and for the first time since he'd met her, he saw her completely relax. It was a moment of peace amidst the approaching storm, but it was also a reminder of what was at stake. The battle against Luca Muller and Rose Salin would be intense, but Victor now had something he didn't possess 10 years ago when he faced his former partner, a reason stronger than pride or money to win. He had Helena, a child who deserved a better future than the past that had been imposed on her. 2 days after discovering the connection to Luca Muller, Victor received an unexpected call from Agnes, the social worker. Rose Salin had contacted the authorities, claiming that Helena had been kidnapped by Victor and demanding the girl's immediate return. She is accompanied by lawyers and claims there was a misunderstanding at the airport, Agnes explained over the phone. She says she was only away for a few hours to deal with an emergency, and when she returned, Helena had disappeared. Victor looked out the office window, where Helena was playing in the garden with a set of colored pencils he had bought for her. The girl was more relaxed, smiling more often, and for the first time in days had slept through the night without nightmares. Agnes, you have the security camera footage from the airport. It clearly shows Rose leaving without the child and without looking back. I know, Mr. Allianz, but she has an aggressive legal team. They are claiming that the images were misinterpreted and that Rose had instructed Helena to wait in a specific location. And Helena? Did anyone ask her opinion about getting back with Rose? There was a pause on the other end of the line. That's one of the problems. Rose's lawyers are arguing that Helena is too young to make decisions about her own guardianship and that she was influenced by you. Victor felt his anger rising. It was exactly the kind of legal manipulation Luca Muller used, twisting facts, creating alternative narratives, using the judicial system as a weapon. Agnes, I need time to gather all the evidence we have. Helena has revealed important information about neglect and forced isolation. I'll try to postpone the hearing for a few days, but I need you to document everything Helena said, and Mr. Allianz, prepare for an intense legal battle. Victor hung up the phone and went down to the garden, where Helena had finished a new drawing. This time, It was the house where he lived with Rose, depicted in dark colors, with a little girl behind a closed window. "Helena, I need to talk to you about something important." She looked up, immediately noticing the seriousness in his voice. "Is it about Rose?" "Yes. Rose is saying she wants you back. That there was a misunderstanding at the airport." Helena turned pale and instinctively clutched her teddy bear, Theo, to her chest. "She doesn't want me back because she likes me. She wants me back for the papers." "What rolls?" "The papers that Dad left for me. Rose always said that when I got older I would have to sign some important papers, but she never really explained to me what they were." Victor sat down on the grass next to Helena. "Do you remember the key your daddy gave you?" Helena nodded, unconsciously touching the teddy bear where the key was hidden. "Do you think this key can open the place where those important papers are kept?" Helena thought carefully. "Dad had a desk in his office in the house where we lived before Rose. After he left, Rose said she sold all his furniture, but I once overheard her talking on the phone about keeping the desk in a safe place until the girl grows up. Do you know where that table could be right now?" "I don't know, but I remember Rose talking about a warehouse in the next town when she thought I wasn't listening." Victor picked up his phone and called Aaron Carmin, Pietro Ollin's lawyer. He explained about the key and the possibility of important documents being stored somewhere. "Mr. Allianz, if Pietro left a key for Helena, it's possible it's for a safe or secret drawer where he kept the original documents of the will. If Rose has been manipulating the guardianship based on forged copies, the original documents could invalidate everything she has done. How can we locate this warehouse? I'll check Pietro's records to see if he rented any storage space. In the meantime, keep Helena safe. If Rose and Luca find out about the key, they might try to get it back through less legal means." Victor hung up and turned his attention back to Helena, who was drawing again, this time a giant golden key opening a door with light emanating from within. "Helena, would you like to go for a walk with me today?" "Where to?" "I want to take you shopping for new clothes and maybe some toys. You deserve to have nice things." Helena's eyes lit up. "Rose always said I didn't need pretty clothes because nobody saw me anyway." Rose's casual cruelty was a constant reminder of the toxic environment in which Helena had grown up. Victor was determined to show the girl that she was valuable, seen, and loved. In the capital's shopping mall, Helena marveled at the colorful shop windows and the bustling crowds. It was obvious she had little experience in lively public spaces. Victor let her choose clothes she liked, observing how carefully she selected items, always asking prices and seeming concerned about costing too much money. "Helena, you can choose whatever you want. You don't need to worry about the price. Rose always said I was too expensive to keep, that I cost more than I was worth." Victor crouched down in front of Helena in the middle of the children's clothing store. "Helena, look at me. You're worth more than any amount of money in the world. Never let anyone convince you otherwise." Helena nodded, but Victor could see that it would take time for her to internalize those words after years of hearing the opposite. In the food court, Helena ate an ice cream with an expression of pure happiness, smearing it on her face and laughing when Victor joked about her turning into a human popsicle. It was the first time he had seen her behave like a child, without the constant caution she always displayed. "Victor," Helena said suddenly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you help me at the airport? You didn't even know me." Victor thought carefully about his answer. "Because when I saw you there, alone and scared, I remembered my daughter, and I thought that if Olivia were lost somewhere, I would want someone to take care of her. Olivia was lucky to have a father like you, and now you also have someone who cares about you." Helena smiled, but then her expression turned serious. "Victor, what if Rose forces me to go back to her? What if the judges believe I should stay with her? I won't let that happen, Helena, I promise. But you might not be able to protect me. Adults always decide what happens to children, and they don't always decide correctly." Helena's painful wisdom struck Victor deeply. She had learned very early on that the world wasn't always fair to children. "Helena, can I tell you a secret?" She nodded, leaning closer. "Ever since Olivia left, I've felt lost. I didn't know what my purpose in life was. But when I met you at the airport, I felt that maybe destiny had brought us together. You gave me a reason to fight again." Helena reached out her small hand and touched Victor's. "Dad used to say that people meet when they need each other. Maybe I needed you as much as you needed me." Back home, Victor received a call from Felipe Limen with important news about the investigation. "Victor, we found the storage unit that Pietro Ollins rented before he passed away. It's still in his name and Rose apparently doesn't know about it. I obtained a court order to inspect the property." "And what about Rose? Did she get the hearing to get Helena back?" "The hearing is scheduled for 3 days from now, but we have a few tricks up our sleeve." Aaron Carmin discovered serious irregularities in the documents Rose presented as Pietro's will. Apparently, they were altered after his death. "How are they altered?" "The original will, which we found in the registry office files, named Pietro as Helena's guardian, until she turned 18, with the inheritance being managed by an independent bank. The document that Rose presented names her as the sole guardian with total control of the assets." Victor felt a surge of hope. "Does this mean her guardianship is invalid?" "Exactly. And if we find documents in Pietro's storage facility that prove his true intentions, we can invalidate everything Rose has done in the last 2 years. When can we access the warehouse?" "Tomorrow morning. And Victor, I suggest you take Helena with us. If the key she has opens something important there, she needs to be present." That night, Victor carefully explained to Helena what they would do the next day. She listened attentively, holding her teddy bear Theo as she always did when she was nervous. "Do you think we'll find the papers Dad wanted to leave me?" "I think so. Your dad seemed like a very caring and intelligent person. He probably left clear instructions about how he wanted you to be cared for." Helena gently opened the teddy bear's stitching and took out the golden key. "Dad said this key unlocked important stories. Maybe they're stories about how he wanted my life to be. I think he wanted you to be happy, protected and loved, and we're going to do everything we can to make that happen." Helena carefully put the key back in the teddy bear. "Victor, can I tell you another secret?" "Always. Since I came to live with you, I haven't had nightmares anymore. For the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid to sleep." Victor felt tears welling up in his eyes. Helena's trust was the greatest gift he could receive, and also the greatest responsibility he had assumed since Olivia's departure. "Helena, sleep well. Tomorrow we'll discover the secrets your daddy has been keeping for you." As Helena went upstairs to her room, Victor stayed in the living room looking out the window. He knew the next few days would be crucial, not only for Helena's legal future, but for the kind of life she would have. Rose and Luca had underestimated one important thing. A father who had lost his daughter was capable of fighting with an intensity they hadn't expected. Victor was ready for the battle ahead, armed not only with legal evidence but with something far more powerful: unconditional love for a child, who deserved every chance at happiness the world could offer. The following morning, Victor, Helena and Felipe Limen headed for the neighboring town where the warehouse Pietro Ollins had rented 2.5 years ago was located. Helena remained quiet during the journey, holding her teddy bear Theo tightly and watching the landscape unfolding outside the window. The warehouse was located in a discreet industrial area, a cluster of low concrete buildings where people stored furniture, documents and valuables. The manager, a gentleman named Theo, greeted them at the main entrance. "Mr. Ollins was an exemplary tenant," Theo remarked, as he led them through the narrow hallways. "He always paid on time and came here at least once a month to check on his things. After he passed away, no one else came." "His wife never came here?" Philip asked. "Not that I recall, and I have a good memory for clients, mind you." They finally arrived at booth 47, a small but well-organized room. Inside, there was a dark wood table, some filing boxes, and a small piece of furniture that looked like some kind of portable office. Helena approached the table reverently, running her hand delicately over the polished surface. "This is Dad's desk. I remember it from our home office." Victor watched as Helena's eyes filled with restrained tears. It was as if she were finding a lost part of her father. "Helena, would you like to try using the key?" Victor asked gently. Helena took the golden key from the teddy bear's belly and began to examine the table carefully. There were several drawers, but none seemed to have a visible lock. Felipe helped search, and it was he who discovered a small sliding panel on the side of the table. "Here," said Philip, pointing to a tiny, almost invisible lock. "It looks like it matches your key." Helena inserted the key with trembling hands. The lock turned smoothly, and the panel opened, revealing a secret compartment. Inside was a leather briefcase and a sealed envelope with the name Helena written in Pietro's elegant handwriting. "That's the name of the handwriting my dad used to do," Helena whispered, recognizing the writing. "He always wrote my name like that when he left me little notes." Victor helped Helena carefully remove the documents from the compartment. The folder contained Pietro's original will, completely different from the version Rose had presented to the authorities. Felipe examined the documents with professional attention. "Victor, this is impressive. The original will not only names you as Helena's preferred guardian in case of emergency, but also reveals that Pietro suspected Rose's intentions." "What do you mean?" asked Victor, surprised to see his name mentioned. "Pietro wrote here that, should anything happen to him, Rose should not have full access to Helena's assets until the girl turned 21. And more importantly, he specifically mentions that if Rose showed signs of negligence or manipulation, guardianship should be transferred to Victor Allianz, an upright man I met through business and whom I trust to protect my daughter." Helena looked at Victor with wide eyes. "Did Dad talk about you? Did he know you?" Victor tried to remember. The name Pietro Allianz was familiar, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly where he had met the man. "Helena, can I see a picture of your dad?" Helena opened her sketchbook and showed him one of the most detailed portraits she had ever made. Victor immediately recognized the face. Pietro Allianz had been a financial consultant at a company where Victor had worked a few years before. They had worked together on a complex project, and Victor remembered Pietro as an ethical and dedicated man. "Now I remember," said Victor, feeling emotional. "Your father was my partner on an important project about 4 years ago. He talked a lot about you, always showing him drawings you made." "Did Dad talk about you?" Helena repeated, as if she couldn't believe the coincidence. "He spoke. He said he had a daughter who was an artist, and that one day she would be a very special person." Helena began to cry, but they were tears of relief and happiness. "That's why Dad wrote your name on the paper. He already knew you would take good care of me." Felipe continued examining the documents and found something even more revealing. Letters that Pietro had written to Helena, explaining his suspicions about Rose and the protective measures he had taken. "Helena, your father wrote several letters to you. Would you like me to read one of them?" Helena nodded, wiping away her tears. Felipe carefully opened one of the letters and began to read. "My dear Helena, if you are reading this letter, it means that something has happened to me and that you have found the secret place where I kept these documents. I hope Victor Allianz is with you, as he is one of the few people I completely trust to protect you. I need to tell you some truths about Rose. I married her after her mother passed away, but over time I realized that Rose was more interested in the money I would leave you than in our well-being. She's not a bad person, but she's dangerously ambitious. That's why I created this secret place and left clear instructions on how you should be cared for. I want you to grow up happy, go to school, have friends, and fulfill all your dreams of becoming a great artist. If Rose tries to stop this, or if she tries to improperly control the money I left you, Victor will know what to do. Trust him as I trusted him. I love you more than all the stars in the sky, my little princess." Helena wept openly now, but they were tears of relief and love. She finally had the answers she was looking for and confirmation that her father had planned for her protection even after his passing. Victor knelt beside Helena and hugged her. "Your daddy loved you very much, Helena, and he was right. I will always protect you." Felipe found more revealing documents, audio recordings that Pietro had made of conversations with Rose, where she clearly demonstrated her intentions to control Helena's inheritance, and even records of meetings that Rose had had with Luca Muller before Pietro's departure. "This proves that the conspiracy began while Pietro was still alive," said Felipe, examining the dates. Luca and Rose had been planning to seize Helena's assets for over 2 years. "And now?" Victor asked. "We now have sufficient evidence not only to invalidate Rose's guardianship, but also to prosecute her and Luca for fraud and document manipulation. Tomorrow's hearing will be a mere formality. During the return trip, Helena was visibly calmer. She held her father's letter against her chest, as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. "Victor, can I ask you a question?" "Always, Helena." "Do you think Dad planned all this? You meeting me at the airport, me staying with you?" Victor thought carefully. "I don't think he planned exactly how it happened, but I think he gave you all the necessary tools so that you could find the right path when you needed to. The key, the teddy bear, even teaching me how to draw so I wouldn't forget him. All of this. Your father was very intelligent and loved you too much to leave you unprotected." That afternoon, Victor received an angry call from Rose Salon. She had discovered that they had accessed Pietro's storage unit and was desperate. "Victor Alliance, you have no right to touch my late husband's belongings." "Actually, Rose, I do. The documents we found prove that you manipulated Pietro's will and kept Helena captive for the last 2 years." "That's a lie. I took care of that girl as if she were my own daughter. He took care of her by locking her in rooms, keeping her isolated from society, and planning to abandon her when he no longer needed her for his schemes." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Rose, I advise you to confess everything and cooperate with the investigation. The evidence we have is irrefutable." "You don't understand who you're messing with, Victor. Luca Muller isn't going to give up easily. Tell Luca that this time he chose the wrong opponent. Helena isn't just an orphan child. She's my daughter now, and I'll protect her with everything I have." Victor hung up the phone and found Helena in the living room drawing again. This time, she was creating a portrait of Pietro, but now she included Victor beside him, as if the two men were passing on the guardianship of a beloved daughter. "Helena, we're going to the hearing tomorrow. Are you nervous?" "A little, but Dad wrote that you would know what to do, and I trust you." "And I trust you too. You were very brave keeping the key and remembering all the important details." Helena smiled. "Dad always said that brave girls can change the world. Maybe now I can help other children who are in the situation I was in." Victor looked at Helena with admiration and pride. In just 1 week, he had seen this child transform from a frightened and isolated girl into a determined and hopeful young woman. Pietro was right. Helena would truly be a very special person. "Helena, regardless of what happens tomorrow, I want you to know that you already have a family, you already have a home." Helena stood up and hugged Victor tightly. "I know, and for the first time since Dad left, I'm not afraid of the future." That night, while Helena slept peacefully in her room, Victor reviewed all the documents they had found. The evidence was overwhelming. Rose and Luca had conspired to appropriate Helena's inheritance, keeping the child isolated and vulnerable until they could get rid of her completely. But Pietro Ollins had been smarter than all of them. He had devised a protection plan that depended on Victor's integrity and his own daughter's courage, and now finally justice would be served. Victor looked out the window into Helena's room, where a small nightlight he had bought for her created a warm and safe atmosphere. Tomorrow, when the hearing ended, Helena would finally be legally his daughter, and he would officially be the father Pietro had chosen to protect the most precious person in his life. The capital's courthouse was bustling on the morning of the hearing. Victor arrived early, accompanied by Helena, who was wearing a new blue dress and discreetly carrying her teddy bear, Theo, in a small bag. Felipe Limen and Aaron Carmen awaited them at the entrance, surrounded by several folders of documents. "How are you feeling, Helena?" asked Agnes, the social worker, who was also present to testify. "A little nervous, but Dad always said that the truth is stronger than any lie," Helena replied, with a maturity that impressed everyone present. When they entered the courtroom, Victor saw Rose Salon for the first time. She was an elegant-looking woman with perfectly styled dark hair, but there was something cold in her eyes that immediately explained why Helena always seemed tense when she spoke about her. Next to Rose was a man Victor instantly recognized, Luca Muller. Older, with grey hair but with the same calculating smile Victor remembered from 10 years ago. Luca greeted him with a sarcastic nod as if they were old friends reuniting. Judge Anna Allianz, no relation to Victor despite the surname, was known for her impartiality and rigor in cases involving child welfare. She carefully examined everyone present before beginning the hearing. This case involves the guardianship of Helena Ollins, currently under the temporary care of Mr. Victor Allianz. The plaintiff, Rose Sallin, alleges that there has been a misunderstanding and that she never abandoned the child. Rose's lawyer, a man named Chiara Carmin, presented his version of events. According to him, Rose had left the airport only to deal with a medical emergency, and when she returned, Helena had disappeared. My client is desperate to get her stepdaughter back, with whom she has had a romantic relationship for over 2 years, Chiara declared with conviction. Philippe Limen stood up to present Victor's defense. Your Honor, we have evidence proving not only that there was intentional abandonment, but that the plaintiff kept Helena in inadequate conditions and manipulated legal documents to appropriate the child's inheritance. The first piece of evidence presented was the airport security camera footage. The recordings clearly showed Rose leaving Helena at the column and exiting the building without looking back, remaining absent for more than 6 hours. Rose shifted uncomfortably in her chair as the images were displayed. The applicant claims that she instructed the child to wait in that specific location, said Chiara, attempting to explain her client's behavior. Felipe then presented the audio recordings that Pietro had secretly made, where Rose openly discussed her plans to control Helena's inheritance. One of the recordings was particularly incriminating. That girl is a hindrance, Rose's voice said on the recording. The sooner I can transfer everything to my name, the better. Pietro was naive to leave everything to a child. Rose's face paled as her own voice echoed through the courtroom. Judge Anna then addressed Helena. Helena, can you tell me about your life with Mrs. Rose? Helena stood up bravely, discreetly holding her teddy bear, Theo. I was locked in my room most of the time. Rose said I made too much noise and cost too much money. She never let me leave the house or talk to other people. And what about school? Did you attend any school? No. Rose always said I wasn't ready to go to school yet, but Dad taught me to read before he passed away, so I was able to read some books on my own. The judge made some notes. Helena, can you tell me what happened the day Rose took you to the airport? Helena took a deep breath. Rose said we were going on a beautiful trip to a place where I could play. But when we arrived at the airport, she said she'd forgotten something important and that I should wait. She seemed too happy. Like when men in suits came to the house to talk about paperwork. What men in suits? Helena looked in Luca Muller's direction. One of them is here, the man with the gold ring who always wore a red tie. Luca visibly shifted in his chair. Until that moment, he had tried to remain a mere observer, but Helena's identification placed him squarely at the center of the conspiracy. The judge addressed Luca. Mr. Muller, did you know Pietro Ollins? We had business in common, Luca replied evasively. Felipe then presented the documents found in the storage room, including Pietro's letters, where he expressed his suspicions about Rose and Luca, and especially the original will that named Victor as Helena's preferred guardian. Your Honor, the will that Mrs. Rose presented to assume guardianship is a falsified version of the original document. Pietro Ollins not only suspected Rose's intentions, but had taken specific measures to protect Helena. The revelation that Victor had been specifically chosen by Pietro caused murmurs in the room. Rose sighed deeply, as if she knew her charade was crumbling. Aaron Carmin presented financial evidence showing that Rose had attempted to transfer Helena's properties and investments to accounts controlled by companies linked to Luca Muller. The plan was simple, Aaron explained. Keep Helena isolated until she turned 18, force her to sign documents transferring her inheritance, and then get rid of her when they no longer needed her signature. The judge asked Rose if she had anything to say in her defense. Rose looked at Luca, who made an almost imperceptible gesture with his head, as if advising her to remain silent. But Rose seemed tired of lies. I never meant to hurt Helena, Rose said finally. But Pietro left a fortune to a child, and I thought it Would be best if an adult managed that money. And what about isolation? Keeping the child away from school and society? Rose looked away. Luca said it would be easier to manage the guardianship if Helena kept a low profile, that no one would ask questions about the administration of the assets. Rose's confession sealed the fate of the case. Luca tried to stand up to leave the courtroom, but the judge ordered him to remain seated. Mr. Muller, from what I understand, you were the mastermind behind this scheme. Luca tried to deny it, but Felipe presented more evidence. Bank transfer records, fraudulent contracts, and even recordings of phone conversations between Luca and Rose where they discussed how to resolve the Helena problem once and for all. Furthermore, Your Honor, Felipe added, Luca Muller has a history of personal conflicts with my client, Victor Allianz. We believe that abandoning Helena at the airport, where Victor frequently travels, was not a coincidence, but a way of involving Victor in a situation that could harm him personally. The judge looked directly at Luca. Mr. Muller, did you use an orphaned child to get revenge on a personal enemy? Luca finally lost his composure. Victor Allianz destroyed my reputation 10 years ago. He deserved to pay for it. Using an innocent child as an instrument of revenge, Luca's awkward silence was answer enough. The judge turned to Helena again. Helena, where would you like to live? With Rose or with Victor? Helena didn't hesitate. With Victor. He made me feel safe for the first time since Dad left, and Dad left a note saying he trusted Victor to take care of me. The judge reviewed all the documents one last time and made her decision. Based on the evidence presented, it is clear that there was intentional abandonment of the minor Helena Ollins, in addition to serious negligence during the period of guardianship exercised by Ms. Rose Sallin. Pietro Ollin's original will be considered valid, invalidating all fraudulent documents presented by the applicant. Rose began to cry, but they were tears of defeat, not remorse. Furthermore, the judge continued, I order that criminal investigations be initiated against Rose Sallin and Luca Muller for document fraud, misappropriation, and child neglect. The guardianship of Helena Ollins is permanently transferred to Victor Allianz, as per the express wishes of her biological father. Helena held Victor's hand when the decision was announced. For the first time since he had met her, Victor saw tears of pure happiness in her eyes. Mr. Allianz, the judge said, I hope you understand the responsibility you are assuming. Helena is a child who has experienced significant trauma and will require specialized care. I understand perfectly, Your Honor. Helena is not just a responsibility for me, she is my daughter, and I will do everything to ensure she has the happy childhood her father wanted for her. When they left the courthouse, Helena hugged Victor tightly. Now I'm officially your daughter. Officially and forever, Victor replied, feeling his heart fill with a joy he hadn't experienced since before Olivia left. Agnes approached them. Mr. Allianz, I will be accompanying Helena over the next few months to ensure her adjustment goes smoothly, but from what I see, this girl has found exactly where she belongs. Felipe congratulated Victor on his victory. It's rare to see a case where justice is so clear and definitive. Pietro Ollins would be proud. When they got home, Helena ran to her room and brought out her sketchbook. On the last page, there was a new drawing. Victor, Helena, and Olivia together, with Pietro watching from the sky with an approving smile. Now we are a complete family, said Helena. Dad and Olivia are watching over us from heaven, and we are watching over each other down here. Victor embraced his new daughter, knowing that Pietro had planned everything perfectly. Helena had not only found a new home, she had found her destiny. And Victor, who thought he had lost his chance to be a father again, discovered that paternal love knows no bounds when you find the right child at the right time. The legal battle was over, but the father and daughter's journey was just beginning. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Victor and Helena's story has deeply touched you. This narrative reminds us that sometimes we find our family in the most unexpected places, and that true love has the power to transform lives and create legacies that extend far beyond our own existence. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories that explore the deepest human bonds. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring you unique stories that celebrate the strength of love, family, and redemption. Share in the comments how this story made you feel. Your reflections enrich our community and inspire others. Until the next story.